Good morning and welcome to your Partner in Success Radio. I'm Denise Griffitts, your host, and I'm delighted that you're here with us today. And this is the show where top business leaders, authors, and entrepreneurs share real world strategies. And they come on this show to help you build a sustainable, successful business on your own terms. And today I am joined by Matthew Pollard, widely known as the Rapid Growth Guy. Excuse me. He's a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and business growth strategist who helps introverts, I am one, I'm waving my hand, and entrepreneurs create rapid success without pretending to be someone they're not. And before we go further, I want to thank our sponsor. Today's episode is supported by Roberta Fernandez, your mind stylist. If you've ever wished that you could upgrade the way you think, respond, or lead, Roberta helps you to do exactly that. As a board-certified hypnotist and emotional intelligence specialist, she blends neuroscience, visualization, and deep mindset work to help you clear out old patterns and step into clarity and confidence. So if you're ready to restyle your mind from the inside out, visit yourmindstylist.com. Now back to Matthew. Matthew Pollard is responsible for five multimillion-dollar business success stories, all before the age of 30. And his humble beginnings, the adversities he faced, and his rise to global recognition show that with the right motivation and the right strategy, and let's face it, hard work, anyone can achieve, I can't talk today, extraordinary results. And today, this is important, y'all. Forbes calls him the real deal. He's listed by global gurus as a top 30 sales professional, was named SellingPower Magazine's 2023 Sales Kickoff Speaker of the Year. He's recognized by Sales World Magazine as a top 50 speaker and highlighted by BigSpeak as an international top 10 sales trainer. He is also the founder of IntrovertU.com and the best-selling author of the Introvert's Edge book series. There's a couple of them, and I have one of them on my desk. And those books have sold over 100,000 copies and been translated into 15 languages. Matthew, welcome to your Partner in Success Radio. I'm so excited to have you here, and I love your book.
I'm stoked to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And the great reviews. I know you posted a few times on LinkedIn before this session about the book, so I very much appreciate the support.
Well, the book, and I told you in the green room, I think it was written for me. People like me. I am a highly committed introvert. I don't try to hide it. I am an introvert, but I'm not shy. And I don't have many filters that I've ever located, but solitude is my natural place to be. That's where I live. And this book, for people like me who need quiet, but we don't want to not be able to sell and communicate and reach out to people, this is the perfect book.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that. I think that so many people, they see themselves as second-class citizens because they're introverted. And the
Right.
truth is their skills are just different. Like, their path to success is just different. And once they embrace their natural gifts and lean into different systems and approaches, they really can succeed in, and I don't want to say an extroverted world because I don't believe it to be that. I believe we introverts have an edge over our extroverted counterparts as long as we're not trying to become extroverts, which for me is a recipe for disaster.
It is. And I knew I was an introvert before that was even a word. I mean, I knew that I needed to be away from people. I like people just fine for 59 3/4 minutes, but I've timed it, but they wear me out. I just literally, I can almost feel my battery draining, and I need to get home and just sit quietly. And, I've dealt with that all my life. It's never bothered me. I never thought it was odd. I just knew that's how I operated. But apparently most people just think they need to be something different. And that's, like you said, that's not true.
I think all the time people, they see somebody else's success and they try to duplicate that. And I mean, common theory talks about this all the time. We should model the successful people. The problem is that we all have unique skill sets, unique burdens to bear. And a lot of times we try and model somebody else, which, fair enough, might try and find a model that works for you, but try and find a model that works for you is the most important part of that, rather than trying to bend yourself to a model that is successful for somebody else. And I I see this happen often where and even I've done it. I've projected extroversion upon someone else and gone, "Oh, it's easy for them." So, it's quite easy for us to say, "Oh, I'm not going to try." And then other people are like, "You know what? I wanna be successful like them anyway." So we then start copying all of their behaviors. And if we luck out, because 'cause I've projected extroversion upon a whole bunch of people that were actually introverted and very successful because of their introverted skill sets, then we can luck out. But other times, we're trying to become extroverts, which just doesn't work for us. And truthfully, I wouldn't want to be an extrovert. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they're not the best listeners. You could
No.
say they're not the most empathetic. Why would we want to
Right.
copy that? They should learn to have those skills, and we shouldn't learn to forget them because we want to be very loud. What we need to do is learn how to embrace an ability that doesn't get us stuck in our head thinking about what to say, focuses on not saying things off the cuff and then going home and ruminating and beating ourselves up about things later. And then also allows us to leverage these amazing skills like active listening and empathy and practice and planning and all these amazing gifts that we introverts we have in spades.
We do. And listen, when I'm out and about in public, which, admittedly is rare. I mean, I have everything delivered to the door when I can, but when I'll mention or somebody will say, "Denise, what do you do? What do blah, blah, blah." And I'll say, "Well, I'm a highly committed introvert." And they look at me with shock because I don't come across in person as an introvert. I'm interested, I'm listening, I'm asking questions. I'm
You
not
know,
a
that one always interests me when somebody says, "Oh, Matt, you don't look like an introvert." My
Yeah,
first
yeah.
response is, am I supposed to be like this, unshowered, acne-ridden person that's hiding under a bridge and not come out? Like, I understand the concept of introverts tend to be wanna be more to themselves, but that concept of somebody saying you don't look like an introvert, like we're supposed to look differently, doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I feel like when we think about introverts, we have to change our framing. Introversion is and look, don't get me wrong, the psychologists have made it way too confusing, maybe because there's too many research grants associated with it. But the fact of the matter is, introversion is as simple as where you draw your energy from. That's it.
Exactly,
It it's
exactly.
it's not that we can't sell or we can't network. I mean, Zig Ziglar, the most well-known sales trainer who ever lived, was an introvert. Ivan Misner, a personal friend of mine, the founder of BNI, the world's largest networking group in the world, also an introvert. You think you can't do small talk? Oprah Winfrey, David Letterman, both introverts. It's just where you draw your energy, and it horrifies me a lot of times about what the world sees introversion as. And I did this event at the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, which is world's longest acronym, but basically it's where all the best and brightest inside sales professional leaders go. And I did their main stage address, and I talk about storytelling because no one wants to hire someone to talk about introversion. So when I'm talking to small business owners at small business events, I talk about rapid growth, and I seed in my introversion story. When I'm speaking at big corporations, I talk about storytelling, and I seed in my introverted story. But what's interesting is often it leads to a further dialogue around introversion. And they asked me to come back and get the top of the cream of the crop of the AAISP into a leadership event, which was much more like a hot seat kind of Q&A session where they could ask me a whole bunch of questions around introversion and storytelling, but mostly introversion. And what was really interesting is I said, look, let's just make it fun. Let me send out a survey to everybody just to ask who's introverted, who's extroverted. Firstly, I was blown away at how many of the best in the world sales leaders of big corporations were introverted because I always find that introverts are the best planners, best preparers, they're best at teaching staff. And by the way, if you ever want to sell your business and you're an extrovert listening to this, good luck if you're the primary salesperson. But what was interesting is how many people, because I didn't say just tick a box, I got them to write the answer. And the number of people that said comments akin to, "Oh, I was introverted, but don't worry, I'm not anymore." Like it was a disease they had to
Oh,
recover.
no. You've actually heard that?
I've heard it more than once and frequently.
Oh,
And that's
ouch.
why I'm sensitive to "Oh, you don't look like an introvert." Because a lot of people are actually saying that in a way that they're like, "Oh, you don't look like an introvert because I may have been an introvert and I tried to run from it." Or I see other people and I see it as something that's a bad thing. And the truth is, if you look at most of the successful leaders, I'm not saying some, like like a lot of these introvert lists kill me because it's like, think of, Mark Zuckerberg, he's an introvert. Elon Musk, he's an introvert. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But as I said, so was Oprah. Like you've got to understand that a lot of the successful people we look to today Brian Smith, the founder of billion-dollar brand UGG Boots, not technology, sheepskin boots. He's an introvert. So many other people like that. I've got a podcast myself called The Introvert's Edge, and I literally just interview amazingly successful introverts because I want them to tell their own introverted story, highlight that they still see themselves as introverted and the skill sets that they've learned, and then talk about their introvert's edge or what they see as their introvert's edge, as opposed to having this negative slant to it that just drives me nuts.
And, anytime somebody, like you said, well, you don't look like an introvert. What are they expecting? A bow tie and glasses?
Exactly.
I
And
mean, what the heck?
yeah, so I think that people have, and let's give them the benefit of the doubt, people have in their head that an introvert does wear glasses, perhaps, looks a little bit more on the, I don't know, a nerdy side, perhaps, which I don't think is a bad thing. My dad always prided himself on being a nerd, and so did I growing up because I loved to study things and loved to get my head around things. That being said, I didn't look the traditional path, the traditional way, but yes, I also think they have in their head the uncombed or handled hair, the dressing in a weird way, like we're destined to need a makeover or something. Like, I don't know, they just seem to project their view of introversion is the unpopular kids at school. And again, there are lots of popular kids at school that are introverted. And more than that, when you think about it, it's actually not hard. Actually, there's a story in the first chapter, actually, of my second book. And by the way, I'm going to talk about this. And if you've got kids at home, you absolutely should give this to them to read. And you don't, my publisher's going to hate me for saying this. You don't need to buy my book to get that. Like, just go to the Introvert's Edge to networking.com. You can download the first chapter and give it to them. Now, this is a kid that literally picked up my first book, The Introvert's Edge on Sales. And it was his dad that left it on the coffee table. And we're talking about a kid that had a hoodie over his head and didn't really make eye contact with people. And he was, I guess what you would say, the characteristics of what somebody says looks like an introvert. But he was just very reserved and a little shy. Like, shy is not the same thing, as you said,
It's
as introvert.
not. It's not. And I'm not shy. I don't have a filter that I've ever met, to be honest.
And I'm not either. And I've seen extroverts that are shy, and that's terrible. You get your energy from being with people, but yet you're shy. That's tough. But this kid, he picked up the book and he read it cover to cover and then decided that if I could make a system out of selling as an introvert in a way that felt authentic, he could make a system for making friends as an introvert while remaining authentic. And if you can imagine this kid, he carried around my business book on how to sell as an introvert for days, but he actually started to apply what he believed were some of the techniques that would work for him. And then he created some of his own. I don't want to take credit for what he did naturally and brilliantly, but very quickly, he started to make more friends. The hoodie disappeared. He made friends with some of the popular kids. There was a girl in the picture. And today, his life's different. And quite frequently, I will meet someone that's got that's a parent. They might see me speak at an entrepreneurial organization or something like that. And the head admin or one of the staff is like, you know what? I've got a child that's really struggling with introversion and believes they can't succeed. Would you have any advice for them? And I put them in contact with Joel and let them speak to him. And Joel does an amazing job of helping them realize that they've just accepted introversion as a negative thing. Let's be honest. The first time I did a push-up, it felt tough. The first time I went skiing, I felt like I had two sticks going in different directions. All things don't necessarily feel naturally good at the beginning, but can be a lot of fun after time, can take less energy. Like the first time I went skiing, as I said, I was exhausted at the end of a 2-hour training. Now I was skiing all day and it doesn't feel like it takes energy from me at all. I go networking or I go on podcast interviews like this, and especially ones that are nice enough to not make them video and go audio only, and they take far less energy for me. And so you've got to understand that no matter whether we're talking about leadership or sales or networking, all of these skills are not only learnable, they're learnable to do in an introverted way where you leverage your introverted strengths. And to me, one of the biggest things that drives me nuts, and this is why I take real issue with you don't look introverted, is people have typecast us introverts into a part that I don't want to play, and it doesn't sound like you want to play it either. And
no, and I am a nerd, by the way. I mean, I eat, dream, sleep in HTML. I'm a nerd, but
Yeah,
you
and
would never guess it if you saw me.
And that's what's so important because there are so many people like us that, and don't get me wrong, like there are people that just want to code, but then there are other people that don't want to code for somebody else and they need to start a business. And they say, oh, I can't because I'm an introvert. And that's not true. And
No,
then
it's not.
there are people that are, they're in an accounting role and they're like, oh, I hate doing this for someone else. I want to start my own business. There are other people that have got this amazing amount of IP and life experience. And actually, Brian Smith, that's why I use him as an example. Brian Smith, when I first met him, he just got into the speaking trade, and he spoke at my event in Austin, my small business festival. And he flew in from California and he spoke, and he went. He was incredible, but I could tell he wasn't being authentic. There were certain things in his behavioralisms, and he was exhausted afterwards. And he also, there was a lot to it that I was like, what's happening here? We had a chat afterwards about kinda how he was presenting himself and the training that he'd got, and I found out that he'd, got some extroverted coaching, which, by the way, he may not have become a professional speaker if he didn't, so there's nothing wrong with that. But then I helped him realize that he could show up more authentically, and it was only a dialogue between friends. And next thing I knew, I mean, he spoke at the Inc. 500 and got a standing ovation not long ago. And he just feels so much more authentic doing it. And so there are lots of people out there that go, "Oh, I could never get into leadership. I could never be, especially a senior leader. I never get, complimented or appreciated for my contributions because no one notices. I never can meet the right people to improve my career or improve my business or get leads and get sales. Like I can't start a business because I don't know how to sell." And they put themselves in this box that they see as an impossible because I just don't have the gregarious gift of gab. And that is a fabrication that's controlling their lives and stopping them from getting to where they need to be or want to
It
be.
is. It is. And, I am blessed to meet people like you and read your books. I have thousands of books in here. I'm known as an author's podcaster because I read everything. In fact, I don't like to go to sleep because it cuts into my reading time, no joke. But I meet and it always comes up in conversation. Denise, you identify as an introvert. I'm a bit shocked, but then it turns out that most, and I'm going to say a high percentage of my guests are also introverts. And that's what makes them so fascinating because they're thinking, they're listening, they're writing, they're doing things. They're not shy like me, and they can speak at will about amazing things, but they need their downtime.
You know what's interesting about that? I have been on, gosh, nearly 150, maybe even 200 podcasts now. And by the way, I'm enjoying this. It's funny how many people stick to a very structured script that they don't change, but came from somebody else that they saw as best practice. And you've done a lot of research, and which, by the way, is very characteristic for an introvert, which means you're asking more thoughtful questions, which makes you a far better host. And what I noticed though is there are two types. Well, firstly, I always try to out the host as an introvert if it's true for them. And I would say at least probably 70% of the people that I get interviewed by, and that's an unreal, it's just a made up statistic, but one that I believe to be true, would be introverted and have owned up to being introverted on the show. And then there's two that sit there. There are people that have been successful enough to get their podcast to a place where I would be willing to be a guest because I want to make sure that when I use my energy, I'm using it in the most appropriate places where the most earbuds will be inspired. There are two types. Ones that have got a very structured process of asking the same questions every time. And that's how they're showing up with this real planned process, but it's not allowing them to show up and ask everybody different and unique questions because they're staying to a rigid structure. And that's like sales scripting where you're reading off the script, if you like. And
Right.
then there is another group like you that have, read the book or even gone and done some online research to really understand the guest and what they're about. And then they show up and they don't just ask thoughtful questions. They show up authentically themselves and say right up front, I'm an introvert and, are willing to kind of play a little bit. They've still got a structured process, but it's a structure come from planning and customization. And that just gives you this kind of much more warm interview, which comes from, by the way, like when you're thinking about sales and networking, it's the same thing. You can sound robotic and sound scripted and say something horrible like an elevator pitch, which nothing sounds more transactional and contrived than that to me. Or you can show up authentically, but show up authentically utilizing planning and preparation so that you show up in the best way possible for networking and sales. And then because you plan and prepared, and maybe because you plan and prepared, you actually have some people that you've already planned to meet in advance, then it doesn't take as much energy. And I would love to know if this is true for you, Denise. Like, because you've done all this planning and preparation, do you feel like these types of interviews, they don't take from you as much?
They don't, and I actually really enjoy them. Hang on a second, I need to cough. I don't know what's going on with that. The weather changes in my part of the country are just bizarre. I mean, we may have 8 different changes in one day, so my
Oh
voice
gosh.
takes a beating. But I do what I do the pre-interview, you know that, because I need to know who you are. Am I gonna like you? Am I going to read your book? I need to know about you, and I read your book. I mean, you sent it to me right away before we even got on the pre-interview, and I went, "Ooh, introverts," and I was immediately in love with this book. I have bookcases all over here, and this is on the second shelf of the one closest to my tower. I mean, I can reach over
Wonderful.
without moving the chair and grab this book because I'm in it all the time. But I do what you're talking about. I do the pre-interview, then I go to Perplexity and I research you. You gave me information I needed, but I want to know more. I want to know who you are, what you do, why you're, and I will ask Perplexity, would Matthew Pollard be a good guest? They waxed eloquent about you. I went, okay, well, I'm good. We're good to go. And then I read the book two and a half, 3 times. I've read it multiple times. By now we're friends. I know who you are and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with you.
And what's interesting, I mean, you're the top, what, 1.5% podcast in the world for entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
And
1.5.
yeah, and I think what most people do, I mean, there are lots of people with podcasts and they're like, why is it that I can't get my podcast? I do more interviews. And it's because they all sound the same. You're just doing there's nothing thoughtful in what you're doing. And then you've showed up, you've read the books, you spent time asking and that means that you're having a very different conversation. And, because of that, your listeners feeling like they're getting something truly unique and they're gifted with that, as opposed to just burning the time for another podcast that they could get from that same guest at 60 other podcasts.
Exactly. And I will say this over and over again. I consider my guests to be my mentors in so many ways. I've got the books. I've had conversations with you. I'm following you. I'm listening to you on your podcast. We're friends. It's that easy.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the incredible difference. And I think that a lot of people they're looking for that silver bullet to become an amazing, what one sales technique, what one networking technique, what one podcasting technique or marketing technique can make me successful in my business. And the answer is strategy before tactics and planning and preparation for everything. So for me, I mean, I learned to sell the hard way. It was really uncomfortable for me. I mean, and then I learned to network. And gosh, that was a terrible experience until I figured out how to do it the right way. And then, a lot of things I then realized there were ways and strategies that I could be successful. So when I spoke from stage, I look for best practice and I look for what would work as for me and my natural gifts as an introvert. When, I started my podcast, I did the exact same thing. And just like you, I planned and prepared like crazy because, I mean, I'm interviewing people on the topic of introversion and how it's affecting them. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about your strategy. I want to hear about your strategies as they apply through the lens of introversion. I want to understand what your introvert's edge is. Everyththing that I do, like, I had to have a pre-interview because I was like, these people are gonna show up and they're gonna be, even if I'm prepared, they're not gonna be prepared for the, unique and intimate dialogue we're going to have. So the good shows come from planning and preparation. Great networkers are either naturally gregarious, walking around going, "Do you wanna buy from me? Do you wanna buy from me? Do you wanna buy from me?" I wouldn't wanna be that even if I was an extrovert, or it comes from planning and preparation.
It does. And what I do with this podcast is networking 101. That's truly, it is. This is how I meet people. This is how I get to read your books. This is how I follow you around and go, ooh, okay, I'm going to take that advice right now. I mean, I'm watching, I'm observing, I'm listening. And I think most of us who are introverts, We do. I mean, we're very curious about your story, and you mentioned storytelling. I think in podcasting and in writing and in network, storytelling is way up there in the top 1 or 2% of things that you need to be taught. You need storytelling. People want to know you, like you, and trust you. I mean,
Well,
seriously.
there's a couple of interesting things about that. So, one of the what I find is most people really struggle with networking. They struggle with, even having something that's more authentic as a podcast or because they really fit into a functional skill, and that makes it hard for them. So a story is wonderful because, firstly, one of the things that's really important is no one cares what you do until they see that you care. And we should, before we get off the show today, we should talk about how to convey care and uniqueness, because I think this will really help introverts. But once you get to the point where you've shown that you care, show your uniqueness, then a story is a wonderful way to highlight what it is that you do in a way that's not braggy. So just to be clear, I'm not talking about a case study or a testimonial. Everyone gets that wrong. When you tell a story, the first thing that happens is it activates the reticular activating system of the person's brain. And when you activate a person's reticular activating system of their brain, it actually synchronizes with you. You create artificial rapport. It's an incredible skill set because when you tell a story that's what I call a three-dimensional emotional story, then what happens is it actually creates artificial rapport. So for extroverts that have this small talk thing that they do, if you're an introvert, you'll hate that, right? I like to avoid small talk at every turn, but you still need a way of generating rapport where they feel like they've got this uncanny connection to you. Well, storytelling actually creates deeper rapport than what an extrovert does with small talk. And the science says that introverts are proven to create even deeper rapport than the average extrovert. We're great at creating few deep relationships, but storytelling allows us to create that initial relationship rapport, straight away. And then we're great at fostering the deeper one because we're not feeling, if we're in sales, that we're pitching them. They're like coming alongside and we feel like we're giving them, we're their trusted advisor. Same in networking. The other thing that
Exactly.
the other thing that I find with storytelling is that people remember more of what you say. So a lot of times when we're introverts and we're trying to sell, and by the way, used car salespeople have really destroyed sales for us, right? We think it's this scammy kind of concept. But the truth is, the original definition of the word to sell was to serve. It was derived from the Scandinavian term to serve. And I believe the best way to serve your customers, if your product or service helps them, is to get them out of their own way. And the best way to help them get out of their own way is not by educating them, because you're trying to, and I feel, I get it. Most introverts feel like their job is to educate the customer to make the best decision for them. I mean, if you download 30 years or even 3 years of a college degree into their head in a 30-minute sales meeting, all you've guaranteed is they go with the person that explains it more simply, which is the extrovert that probably, or the person that probably, learned how to sell it well but can't deliver it as well as you do. So if you genuinely can help them, the best way to serve them is to use a story to help them get out of their own way. And you need to make sure that they remember the story. So again, they won't remember a case study or a testimonial. They won't remember all the information that you told them. But if you tell a story, they'll remember the entire narrative. And it's crazy. I do this thing from stage all the time where I pick one person at random, and then I say, I'm just going to pick, 3 random things out of the blue. And I'll do it now. I mean, imagine if you're that guest and everyone listening, just imagine you're that person. And I'm just going to pick 3 random items. So, I'm sitting in a chair right now. So let's go with chairs. Porridge I just had for breakfast. You guys call it oatmeal. Let's go with that. And then let's go with beds as number 3 because I'm in Pacific time and I just got out of bed. So let's go with that. So we've got chairs, porridge, and beds. Now imagine a year from now if I reached out to you and I was like, well, maybe you're in the middle of something. And I'm like, it's really important that you let me know what those items are in the order I told you. Most people won't remember. They're like, every person I asked, they're like, there's no way I would remember that. And I'm like, you can't write it
Chair,
down.
porridge, and bed.
Yeah, but a year from now, would you remember it? And would you remember it in the middle of something? And what's
I
really
might. You never know.
well, some people will, right? Because they just have that kind of memory. Most people are like, no way. And then I tell them the story of Goldilocks and the three. I just remind them of the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, and then instantly they have recall because we connect to those things. And then on top, we connect to narratives. Our brain's programmed to remember items through narrative, and that's why storytelling, again, not testimonials and case studies, more like the story of how you met your spouse. It's become more of an emotional theatrical masterpiece. We don't do that in business. We think that we're being mindful of people's time, but the truth is we tell 20 minutes worth of jargon and they don't want to hear it. And then
They
also,
don't.
no,
And
no,
like
not at
I
all.
took, and I've got to tell you very quickly because I wrote it down and I will forget it. But and I say this all the time. I have two languages: English, Southern English, which maybe some people understand, some don't, and snark. And honestly, snark is my stronger voice. And years ago, I used to try to kind of tamp that down. I went, heck with it. This is who I am. Deal with it. And people will start laughing, and then I'll get emails like, Denise, you are so funny. And they remember when I made them laugh.
Absolutely. And this is the interesting thing because a lot of introverts say that they're not naturally funny. And I usually find out that that's really not true.
It's
And,
not true.
I actually had speech coaching when I first started and, just, speaking in large audiences. And one of the biggest things he did is he was like, hey, Matt, when you say that, that's funny. You should let people like pause for a second and let people enjoy that. And if he didn't tell me that when they laugh, I wasn't prepared and I'd be uncomfortable and I'd move on. And just learning little things like that makes such a difference. But when people say, I'm not funny, well, when you tell stories, like think about the story of how you met your spouse. Like for the people that are listening, right? Think about that. And a lot of you maybe have boyfriends, girlfriends, fiancés, whatever. When you think about that and the time you first told that story, it wasn't as good as it is today. Like there are certain things you may have told and they didn't really enjoy. So you stopped telling those pieces. And then there were elements that people really enjoyed and you embellished on that a little bit perhaps. And then over time it becomes like a little bit of a theatrical masterpiece. You say certain things, your spouse says certain things, you say certain things together. And then you look at each other's eyes and you're like, that's how we met. That is the way you're supposed to tell a business story too. And you say, well, I can't tell a 3 to 5 minute story. Of course you can. Short circuits the logical brain. You speak directly to the emotional brain, which is the buying center. It stops them going, that'll work for me. That won't work for me. This, send me a proposal, hanging up the phone, which is what the logical part of the brain does. The emotional brain just goes story time and it listens. It takes all the detail in the story as fact, which, duty of care. Please make sure that you actually tell truthful stories. And then it listens for the moral. And if the moral is we work with someone just like you and we got them an amazing result, they're going to feel that you can do that for them as well. And that's the true power of story. And a lot of the stories that I tell, I've been told there are certain humorous elements or there are really engaging pieces. And over time, I've practiced and I've practiced and I've practiced. I believe that most businesses are one story away from the rapid growth business that they deserve. The problem is that they think storytelling is case studies and testimonials, which is not the same.
It's not. If you want case studies and reviews, you can find those online or they can be emailed to you. But when you're talking with somebody, or in my opinion, more important, listening to someone, you need to connect right away.
And what's interesting is the average introvert won't tell a case study or testimonial anyway because it feels braggy.
It
When
does. It's
they're
it's icky, to be honest.
Yeah, so, I mean, actually, what might help, I have a story that I tell often that really helps people understand how not to get commoditized and stuck in commoditization, and it's the story I use. If you think about the one story that really built my business, it's this one, but, it might help people kinda getting the understanding of how a story should be told, more appropriately with a lot more emotional content. So the story that I usually tell, and if you can imagine if I'm in a networking event and somebody asks me what I do, I start with what I call a unified message, which we'll talk about. And then I use a passion mission script, which is different to an elevator pitch. And eventually we get into a story. And the story that I say, and I'll say, you know what, let me give you an example. And then I'll tell them about Wendy. And I'll say, look, Wendy was a language coach and, she taught kids and adults Mandarin. And for the longest time, she made $50 to $80 an hour for private consultation. But all of a sudden, she was finding there were all these people moving into California that were willing to charge $30 to $40 an hour for private consultation. I mean, a lot of people have this issue. And I mean, she was struggling to keep her current clients and then struggling to keep struggle to get new clients. And then on top of that, she had to deal with this global economy we now live in. So there were people in China offering to do it for $12 an hour on Craigslist. And thanks to this, our friends in Silicon Valley, there's now technology. I'll teach you Mandarin, you teach me English. We won't charge anyone anything. So now she's competing against free. As you can imagine, that was really stressful for her because she knew she was better than, like, especially today, most of you probably feel like you're better than the AI bots and the things that are told to replace what we do, which we all know don't. And she's like, Matt, regardless of that, I need to learn sales skills because I need to learn how to keep my current clients and convince and cajole people to want to stay with me. And I said, look, Wendy, I'm totally on board with that. I believe every single person would benefit from a sales process. But the truth is that if my preference would be to help you learn to avoid the battle altogether. So I looked at all the clients she worked with over the years, and she worked with hundreds. But what I found was there were two people she helped with far more than just language consulting. Like these were executives being relocated to China, and she helped them understand the difference between e-commerce in China and the Western world, the importance of respect, how to handle a business card, why you have to reduce your accent, not just learn the language. More
So she
importantly,
was teaching them about the culture.
you're exactly right. I mean,
Okay.
the difference in rapport, it blew me away. Like, in the Western world, like if I'm bad at sales at the end of 45 minutes, I might say something horrible like, "Do you want to move forward?" And if you say you want to think about it and you still say you want to think about it in, a week or two's time, I know I'm not getting that deal. Yet in China, they're going to want to see you 5 or 6 times before they even discuss business. They might want to see you drunk over karaoke once or twice. I mean, it's who they are because they're talking about 20 to 50-year deals, not transactional contracts that are like 12 months long at the best. So she helped them understand this. And I'm like, Wendy, you're doing so much more for these people than just language tuition. As you said, she's teaching them about their culture. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, there's just a few things. I'm just trying to help. And I bet there's not a single listener here that doesn't provide things to their clients, at least to a certain group, that they don't mention during the sale. And like a lot of people, when I do this live, they're like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, well, have you ever got a referral? Well, no one's going to refer. Oh, Denise, you've got to meet my friend Tom. He does nothing special at all. That just doesn't happen, right? You've got to be doing something special for them. And sometimes they say, yes, I get testimonials. No one's going to write a testimonial saying you did everything exactly like everything else. So if you get referrals, repeat business, testimonials, you do something, maybe you don't see it. Now, for Wendy, it was these 3 things. I'm like, Wendy, you're stuck in your functional skill. You're doing so much more for these people. Is it fair to assume as a result of the assistance you're giving these people, they're going to be more successful in China? And she's like, that's the point, right? I said, well, then great. Let's call you the China Success Coach. Forget about Mandarin education for a second. Let's create what we ended up calling the China Success Intensive, which was a 5-week program that worked with the executive, the spouse, and any children being relocated across to China. Now, she loved the idea of this. She's like, well, but who do I sell it to? What she's asking is, who do I go networking to meet? Or who do I post social content, I guess, to get in front of? And I said, well, who do you think? And she said, well, obviously, it's the executive, which makes sense. I mean, I moved from Australia to the United States. I was terrified. People speak the same language here. Imagine going to China. I just didn't think it was the right client. Then she said, well, obviously, it's the corporation. They've got millions of dollars riding on the executive being successful. And I said, still, I agree, but I'm not seeing it. And I don't feel like that's going to be easy for you. And she's
No,
like,
and getting to those people is darn near impossible.
absolutely. And so for people, like they always think, oh, I'll go for the big target, the employees. That's going to be tough. Going to the corporation is, I guess, a much more refined target, but also going to be, as you said, nearly impossible. I said, but what about the immigration attorney? I mean, she looked at me, she's like, well, who do you think? And I'm like, well, what about the immigration attorney? And she said, well, and she looked at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Think about it. These people make $5,000 to $7,000 for doing a visa. They've got to do all the bureaucracy and all the paperwork that comes with that. They've got a cost of getting a customer, which isn't cheap. They've got rent to pay for, staff to pay for. They'd be lucky to make $3,000 for, a successful visa. Why not offer them $3,000 for a successful introduction to the China Success Coach? They loved the idea. They're like, double my profits for a simple introduction? Sure, let's do it. What do I have to say? She said, all you've got to do is say, congratulations, you've now got your visa. I just want to double check you're as ready as possible to be relocated to China. And they'd always respond, you've got a bravado of an executive. I think we're good. We got our place sorted. We're learning the language. Kids are getting pretty good at it too. We've got our visa now. Thank you. I think we're good to go. And she'd just have them respond with, I think you need to speak to the China Success Coach. There's a lot more to it than that. Think about it. They've been recommended by their attorney. Their company has got lots of money riding on it. They're scared to go and their family's terrified. So she'd get on the phone with the easiest sell in the world and she'd have this really comfortable conversation. And instead of charging and struggling to charge $50 to $80 an hour for private consultation, she actually charged $30,000 for doing this program. Minus this $3,000 commission, she made $27,000 for the easiest sale in the world. That's rapid growth, but that comes from understanding what your unique skills are, who you uniquely serve, and targeting the right group of people, which means you can show up far more authentically because every introvert always wants to talk about their functional skill, but they don't think about the unique things they do and who they uniquely help and how they can articulate that value to someone in a totally different way. I'm a sales trainer. And if I say I'm a sales trainer in a networking room, people look at me like I'm one step above a scam artist. If I say I'm in marketing, they're like, oh, I need marketing. How much do you cost? But the truth is, it's not fair for me to introduce myself that way anyway, because I'm a business coach too. I'm a master in neuro-linguistic programming. I teach people the depths of introversion and the powers of introverts. And the only thing I know for a fact is no one cares about all these things. They don't care how hard it was for me to learn them or how long it took me. But when I say I'm the rapid growth guy, the simplicity of that message gets me heard in the crowded marketplace. When I'm in a networking room, it almost gets their brain to explode. And they're like, what exactly is that? And for the first time ever, they're actually asking me questions. And I'm, getting an invitation to give them more information as opposed to feeling like I'm shoving something down someone's throat. That's why it works so well. As long as you don't then tell them your functional skill, and I can give you a way of, explaining things differently. And as long as you don't use an elevator pitch, which is that I love to see, I do this for this group of people, even if, which is just horrific.
And I have to tell you, I mentioned how much I really love working with authors and speakers, and I've met so many of you over the years. But a big breakthrough for me, because I do so many things, so do you. We don't know how to go, well, let me kind of put it into something that makes sense. And you can see on my screen, I'm branded as Denise Griffitts, Nerd and Stiletto. There's a stiletto, and my cat is wound around the heel. But years ago, 10, 12 years ago, I don't even remember now, but I had a guest. We're having a terrific conversation like you and I are doing. And he said, just out of the blue, he said, well, Denise, what is it that you do? And Matthew, I just went, because I do so many things. I talk about them or I don't talk about them. I just do a lot of things. I'm a web developer. I write code while I'm standing over the stove making a gumbo. I do stuff. I have cats. I'm a cat herder. And I thought about it. I said, well, Nordstrom looks like it threw up in my closet. I have way too many stilettos that I don't really wear anywhere, but they're mine and I love them. I've got cats. I'm a cat herder. I've got a computer science degree that nobody cares about. And I just kind of went on. And I had to stop and think. I said, well, I guess I'm a nerd in stilettos. And he said, Denise, call me when this is over. And I always do, by the way. And I called him. He said, why are you not, you do so many things that are helpful to other people. Why are you not branding yourself that way? Matthew, here's the thing. When the publicist for the Academy Award says do something, you do it. I would not have known to brand myself that way ever, but he caught it.
Yeah, I think it kills me that, especially with introverts, we like to be part of a club, right? So, the first thing, like my ghostwriter, for instance, like saying you're a ghostwriter means that you're a commodity just like everyone else. Saying that you're the authority architect and then explaining what that is, all of a sudden it puts you in a position where you don't have any competition. And, Derek's first tendency was to call himself an authority architect and ghostwriter because he's got this really cool way of grabbing really complex ideology and simplifying it into a book. And I said, no, you're the authority architect. Like the ghostwriting's commoditized. Just go with authority architect, right? Imagine if I said I'm the rapid growth guy and introverted sales specialist, right? It's too complex.
It's too much. Exactly.
So what you really want is a 1, 2, or 3 word statement that you can use that sums up your natural brilliance, that doesn't put you in a box with everyone else. And it should be based on what you're passionate about. And, and by the way, for people that are listening to this, you don't need to buy my books for this. There's a template that I have at matthewpollard.com/growth that, I actually did this at the National Freelance Conference, not long ago now. And, at the end of the session, I said, look, do me a favor, put your hand up if you now believe that you've got a unified message, your version of the rapid growth guide, the China success coach, that will actually allow you to, excite and inspire people to want to know more. And you've identified a group that you can go after where you can start to develop what I call momentum partnerships, which for Wendy was the immigration attorney. But I've found now, there are lots of people that are willing to introduce you to groups because you serve them purely because it benefits them and makes them look good to provide introductions that are helpful, and they don't even charge for it. There's so many great value opportunities there. And so because of that, it'll help you identify who those groups will be. And really the group of, willing and wanting by people that will pay you what you're worth. And you can get that at matthewpollard.com, /growth. But once you have that, you need this way of segueing into what you do. Because if I said, somebody would say to you, what is the nerd in stilettos? And for me, like, I like unified messages that convey value or an outcome or a prevention of danger. Like, I have one person that we call the acquisition lifeguard because he saves people that have career CEOs that have a growth through acquisition mindset from buying a company like another accounting firm or another manufacturing firm and inheriting a lot of tech debt or licensing issues that make the acquisition far more expensive, and then they lose stakeholder support and they get fired. Right. So you've got to have it aligned with what makes sense. But once they say, you've got to have a way of responding in an authentic way as well. Because if I say I'm the rapid growth guy and somebody says, what is that? If I respond with, I do all, basically I'm a sales and marketing trainer, I'm straight back into those functional boxes. If I use an elevator, well, I'm not going to use an elevator pitch because it sounds horrific. So I need a different way where I can show up authentically. And so the way I suggest people talk about it is, well, actually, I want you to, for everyone listening, I want you to think about what the difference is. So I'm gonna explain what you should say, and I'll use my business as an example, and then think about what you could use. But while you're doing it, also think about what is different to an elevator pitch. Now, for those people that don't know the traditional elevator pitch, which is the only networking strategy out there up until I created this new one. Basically,
about 5 years ago. I mean, they were everywhere.
Oh, they're horrible.
I know, and
it sounds like people. To me, I can watch somebody's eyes die as they're used, and
they don't make any sense.
Oh, and including the person telling it, they're like, "Oh, this is horrible." They know it's horrible, but they're doing it anyway. But basically, it's I do this for this group of people, even if. Right. So I'm a sales and marketing trainer for introverted service providers that think there's no way that they could ever sell. Right. Something horrible like that. And it's so I centric. So what I do is I say, I'm the rapid growth guy, just like I said, I'm a business coach or I'm a sales trainer. And then they'll say, what exactly is that? Mainly because of two things. One is I was interested in them before I try to be interesting. And the second thing is our brain's programmed to solve puzzles. We have to know what bucket people fit in before we can decide, whether we can entertain the dialogue further, if we need it, or if it's something brand new we've never heard of.
Curiosity. So they'll say, you want people to be curious.
You want people to lean in. You don't want to feel like you're shoving something down someone's throat, which is what you're doing with an elevator pitch. And for those people that are like, oh, I don't tell people what I do, I just ask them a bunch of questions. Stop doing that. No one wants to be interrogated the first time they meet you. So what I do is somebody says, what do you do? I say, I'm the rapid growth guy. And then I stop talking like they should know what that is. And they're like, no, what exactly is that? And I say, well, one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is an amazing introverted service provider with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own. But what I find, I just hate seeing this, is they get stuck in this endless hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, trying to set themselves apart, trying to make the sale, really feeling like people only care about one thing, price. Do you know anyone like that? And then I pause. Of course they do, because I've gone to the right networking events, because I've planned and prepared who I'm probably going to be speaking to. And if you're not connecting with people before a networking event in advance, you can run up to somebody that's probably going to try and sell you insurance. So do yourself a favor, do your homework. So when they respond in the affirmative, I then say, well, I'm on a mission to help people like yourself realize you really can have a rapid growth business doing what you love, just not by getting better at your functional skill. Instead, just 3 things outside the scope of that really allow you to build a business that revolves around you, your family, and your life, not the other way around. Let me give you an example, and then I'll tell Wendy's story. And then all of a sudden, we're having a dialogue. That's the difference. It's a dialogue-based conversation. It also, you might have noticed that instead of I brag, it's far more, I love to see this, I hate to see this, I'm on a mission to do this. It's the change I want to see in the world. It's not about me, right? Number 1 rule of networking, it's not about you. Number 2 rule of networking, you show that you care, then they'll care what you do. And by saying, I love to see, I hate to see, I'm on a mission too, I'm showing that I care. And I haven't even told you what I do if you didn't notice. And so that when we get to me explaining what I do, well, when do I get to that? That's in the story. So what happens is the science behind this is the hook and the being interested is a scientific cocktail that makes people want to lean in. Now you've got the invitation to say, explain. Then the passion, mission, driving why is intoxicating for so many reasons. And then you segue into a story that has so much more science to get people to lean in. Nobody's experienced anything like that. And because of that, they're like, oh, I want what Wendy has. Or tell me more. Or I've got a great friend I should introduce you to. Or you should go on Denise's podcast. I know her. She's amazing. And you'd be a great fit. They become your ambassadors. They become your momentum partners they become your champions. And by the way, sometimes they also become your prospects, but you shouldn't go to networking rooms looking for prospects because that's your ticket to staying stuck in the hamster wheel, right? You want to get out of those rooms. And for me, my whole secret is I want to show you how to master the networking room so you never have to go back to one. And the key is being the clearest, not the loudest. Otherwise, you're on social media taking photos of your dog and donut for something to say and need to be the loudest person in the room in a networking room.
Yeah, and people like that annoy the heck out of me. And I wrote this down, and I know you've got to get to another meeting, but you're talking about functional skills. So many of us have more than one. And I think that confuses, like, where do we start?
I find with introverts, I spend my life working with brilliant people, like absolutely brilliant people. And the problem with brilliant people is they know so much. And I feel like they'd make more money if they knew far less because they don't know how to convey it. So they come across as this jack of all trades, and they're usually better at all of those trades than the masters of one. But the problem is that they spend their life trying to educate people on all the things they do. It's like going and getting the Cheesecake Factory menu off someone. You're overwhelmed, and the only thing you know for a fact is probably every meal's going to be terrible. But the problem is that most people, they don't see how that these skill sets uniquely serve another group because they're so focused on explaining what they do, not who it uniquely helps or who they're passionate about helping, because everybody goes to how can I make the most money? And the truth is, make the most money out of the group you're passionate about. And the fact is you can create a rapid growth business out of anything these days. There's nothing worse than a rapid growth business with customers you don't like and a business you can't stand. So don't take the one that'll make you the most money because then it'll get hard and you're like, what did I do this for? It was supposed to be the easy one. Take the one that's most passionate to you, the skill sets that you're most passionate about delivering, because those are the ones you're more likely going to be better at delivering. And think about it, how it uniquely serves others. The problem is people say, what do I want to do? And what customers can serve me, as opposed to what change do I want to see in the world and what does my unique skill set allow me to do for them? So as soon as you start thinking that way, you start looking through a lens of outcomes for others as opposed to all the skill sets you have. And also know that this is the tip of the spear. I help people from everything from, succession planning to, corporate, big companies and part of strategic planning. But the truth is that if I explain all that stuff when I first meet someone, it overwhelms them and he's probably not great at anything. Corporations know me as the number one storyteller in the world, and small business owners, introverted small business owners, know me as the rapid growth guy. And that gets me in the door with far more people. Funnily enough, gets me in the door with far more extroverts too. That are like, well, I'm not introverted, but I've got a lot of introverted salespeople, or I'm not introverted, but I'm never going to be able to sell my business unless I have a sales system. And so even if I'm conveying my passion, my mission, my driving why for serving others and doesn't include them, it's funny how much people say, well, I don't fit in that box, but I love your passion. I've never experienced anything like that. How do I steal it for me?
Gotcha. Matthew, this has been a powerful conversation, and I would love for you to come back again anytime you like. But before we wrap up, how can our audience, best connect with you? And are there any resources that you haven't talked about that you'd like to point them to?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, I feel like most people here need to start to be thinking about what's unique about them. So the exercise I gave you, and I would always recommend getting somebody else to listen to this same podcast if you got value from it, and then doing the exercise with them. Because if you're a business coach, don't do it with another business coach. If you're a ghostwriter, don't do it with another ghostwriter. But go to matthewpollard.com/growth, and there you'll be able to download a template to come up with your unified message and create your group of willing and wanting to buy clients. And as I said, 97% of the room after a 2-hour session did this, and were able to get success by just using this template. The sad part was 85% of the people said that this was the most time they've ever spent working on their marketing. So truthfully, it works if you spend the time doing it. Do it with someone else. It'll take you about an hour each. So block out 2 hours. The other thing you can do is go to the Introvert's Edge to networking.com and download the first chapter of that book. And that's got that story in it about that will really inspire any children that you have that are introverted and help you understand introversion differently as a networker. The introvertsedge.com is my sales book. My publisher hates me when I say this. You don't need to buy that book either. Just go there, download that first chapter, and you'll be able to grab the 7 steps of the sales process. If you do nothing more than put what you currently say in to that, you'll realize quickly there's some things that don't fit. Throw that out. You shouldn't be saying it to customers. There's some things that are out of order that you'll have to fix. There's some gaping holes usually around the stories that you tell. Again, not testimonials and case studies, but real emotional stories. If you do that, you fix the order and fill the gaps. You'll double your sales in the next 60 days. So you can get that at theintrovertsedge.com. And then the last thing that I would say is I have this big belief that, we introverts, we ask our best questions tomorrow, and because we take time to reflect, and that's a positive thing. So I don't like leaving introverts behind. So if you listen to this and there's one thing that's stopping you from taking action to improve your business or believing in yourself or whatever it is, like I always tell people, go to my testimonials page, and when you're tired of clicking to the next one, then believe that you can succeed as an introvert. Don't read them to believe in me, but read them to believe in yourself. But if you can't get past a barrier or you've got a hurdle that you feel is just in your way, find my LinkedIn profile, connect with me there. I don't mean follow me. I mean, go in and you click a different button to connect. And once I've accepted your connection, mention this podcast, because otherwise, unfortunately, we get so many people reach out to me. So mention this podcast and that you have a question. I'll accept it. And then what will happen is you'll have the ability on an iPhone and Android to send an audio message. And I would suggest, now most people don't even know this feature works. It's the most amazing sales tool on the planet these days to reach out to customers that have ghosted you. Just click the little microphone button next to the text, and you can actually use it like a walkie-talkie and tell me your question. It only gives you 60 seconds to deliver your question, and it gives me 60 seconds to deliver your answer. But I grew up, I fell into a sales role. It was 93 doors before my first sale. I taught myself how to sell watching YouTube videos. I know what it's like to not have any answers or be missing one thing that's stopping me from succeeding. I had a reading speed of a sixth grader when I was in late high school, super introvert. I never expected to be in this place where I am today. And I want to make sure you're not in that place tomorrow. So go and connect with me in LinkedIn. Leave me an audio message if you have a question, and let's break you through it.
Thank you. Listen, I know you've got to go, so you go ahead and delete your show, close it down, and I will do a quick summary and tell our guests, our audience where to find you again and get the book, y'all. Matthew, thank you. And seriously, I would love for you to come back.
I appreciate that. I would love that as well. Well, look, thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.
Thank you. I did too. In the book, I'm telling you, it's never far from me. So go forth, have a great day. And everybody, listen, today's conversation with Matthew Pollard reminded us that the introversion is not a limitation. It's a powerful advantage when paired with clear strategy, purposeful storytelling. That's so important. And a willingness to own your own unique way of doing business. And I encourage you to take at least one idea from this episode. I love the one that he said there at the end. On LinkedIn, use your own voice. I talk about this a lot. Get your voice heard. And that's a good way to do it. So I encourage you to take at least one idea from this episode and put it into action this week. I also encourage you to get this book. It's an amazing book. Thank you for joining us on Your Partner in Success Radio. I'm Denise Griffitts, and I will see you next week on this podcast or the Closers Inner Circle podcast with my co-host Ben Gay III. I broadcast 3 times a week. So I'm always here. If you have questions, find me on LinkedIn, send me a note, and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you, and I will see you next week.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.